travel, or?
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day. We ask you please to be with the law enforcement throughout the United States, Lord. Be with our armed military forces, that you may bless them and guide them and protect them, Lord. We ask for guidance on the city council, that we could be empowered to make the highest and best decisions for all of our residents. In the name of your Son, Jesus, amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We're good to go, but we're missing Shane and Hugh.
They both let us know that they wouldn't be able to attend tonight due to work conflicts.
One move.
I move to excuse council members Severs and Richter.
Second.
With a second for the discussion, I hear no one favor, say aye.
Aye.
The agenda's before you, pretty weak.
I move the agenda as printed.
Second.
Moving in second for the discussion, hearing all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There we go. Strategic planning workshop, which is,
So I'll make just an introductory comment, and then Jen and Trevor are going to kind of take it away from there. So at the last workshop, the council asked that we bring this item back, and it relates to the trailhead irrigation system. Obviously, no decision tonight. We just wanted to kind of share with you, or again share with you, some of the information we provided in the past. What we really need from you is what questions do you have that you would like us to answer. There's no big rush on awarding a contract for this. It is in the budget. That doesn't mean that we have to move forward. But I think with Trevor and Jen that work out on the golf course and some of the other crew that's here tonight is maybe an understanding of if we decide to go forward and not go forward, kind of the implications to our staffing. And so with that, what we'd like to know is what other questions do you have? And then if possible, if we are going to move forward, knowing that, I'm guessing, Jen, in the March and April timeframe would be helpful. So with that, I'll just turn over to Jen and Trevor.
And part of that will have to do with timing of the contract. So if there are timing questions with the contract, Andrew can respond to those. So again, just a quick history on the course. It's 45 years old. We had a report done by a golf professional. He came in and did an assessment on our golf course irrigation system and the status of that system. Wrote the report up, made some recommendations. Overall, the costs could range from anticipated costs could range from $850,000 for an entire irrigation system renovation to as much as $1.2 million. There was not a pump and motor in that bid, so with those installations, it would bump it to approximately $900,000 to $1.3 million. Did I say 2.3? $1.3 million. So with that, we have options. The options are that we do all of the golf course in 1 year. There are options to do the golf course in phases, or do nothing this year is an option and defer it, postpone the maintenance. It is inevitable that everything will need to be done in some fashion sooner than later. Our main line is in very poor condition. It seems like every time we have a break down there, the piping is getting so brittle that when we dig a hole to fix a problem, we just create other problems. As the piping is brittle, it breaks further down at the joints. And we've gotten into the issue where over the last couple of years we have a break. The pipe has actually in one case split 40 feet. The whole main line just split 40 feet down. So the further they keep digging, the more it just keeps cracking. So it's I will say it's dire, but we need to do something. It's time. It's well past its life. The expected life span of an irrigation system is anywhere from 15 to 30 years. So at 45 years, we have well exceeded that. Meadowwood Golf Course, I believe, was installed in the early 90s, and they are now redoing theirs because they're hitting that 30-year span as well. So it's pretty typical and normal for golf courses to redo their irrigation systems in that you start having to think about that at 30 years, and we're at 45. So we've kind of gotten everything out of it that we possibly can. The options I talked about earlier, I think in December, were phasing, certainly an option, but at that point, what you don't do one year and you postpone to the next year and possibly the third year, you have increased product costs, is what we've been told, and then added disruption to the golf course rather than just doing it all in one shot, getting it done and over with. If we just went in and did the main line, which was the initial idea, and later on knowing that we're inevitably going to be replacing our lateral lines and our sprinkler heads, you're digging the main line one year, burying it, and then you're digging it up again a second year to attach the lateral lines to the main line. So you're sort of doing double duty. I don't have a price associated with what those costs are, but it's certainly a cost associated with digging things up twice. So it seems to be the most efficient thing to do, to go ahead and just do it all at once. So does anybody have any questions?
I do. You stated, Jen, that you anticipate that there was another $900,000 for the pumps,
No, the pumping motor itself for about $75,000.
right?
So I think the initial cost was $850,000, so it just increases, add that 75, so 900, 925
So but you're saying
is the new low.
if we go completely everything, which I personally feel if we're going to do anything, let's do it right. Let's do everything instead of just piecemealing this thing if we decide to move forward on that. So we're really looking at if everything is somewhere in the range of 1.3 million.
Right.
I-
Low of 950 and high of 1. We're in that range somewhere. We don't know what that is until it obviously goes out to bid.
Well, I've gone over this several times, and I understand the range between 850 and 1.2. And quite honestly, I'll reiterate, if we're going to do it, we need to do the whole thing instead of just piecemealing with the pump and everything like that, because of the surging with the existing pump we have creates problems. No doubt about that. I do feel, though, we're in a position that, to me, this is part of the overall plan. We need to look at what we're going to be doing with the building, the driving range, things of the sort here. I know that we've been piecemealing this. It's very frustrating, and there is a cost associated with that. But my suggestion would be is that we continue on through this year. Piecemealing, unfortunate as it is, as frustrating as it is, because so many things will come into play, such as Palenque's lease, when that is done, whatever term that's going to be. I think there are other things we have to look at in addition to this item.
And along those lines, I just wanted to add, every time the line goes down, I get an email from Jen or Trevor saying the line's down. They have to mobilize and dig it up. So it's not just the inconvenience to the golfers, it's the expense of, I don't know, Trevor, do you do all of your own excavation and repairs, or do you call in a contractor?
No, we do everything.
So-
Everything is all done by us.
Repairs could take a
And
day,
we
could
put our
take a
most
week.
qualified people on those breaks. Those aren't something that we can just throw new seasonals in a hole and say take away. So unfortunately, part of the cost associated with making repairs one more year, and if that's what we do, that's what we do. But understand, it does take our best people away every time we have a break to go down there. Breaks can take anywhere from overnight to 3 or 4 days before things get drained down and fixed.
I do understand.
So, yeah, okay.
I share Mike's opinion in that I think the work needs to be done in whole rather than in part with respect to the irrigation effort. Rather than digging up this and then later digging up that, I think altogether would be a better investment for the city. I appreciate the investment in the golf course per se, that is the length of the par 5, or I'd say the large part of the course. When people talk about piecemeal as the project of this property, I think that the use of that property for a golf course is what I would foresee for the 25 to 35 year event horizon. So I think this is an investment that's fitted for that period and a good one for the city. So, thanks.
Yes, a couple of things. When it was discussed at the last meeting, I wasn't able to attend, so I didn't know what all the discussion was, but I agree with Councilmember Kennedy that we should do it all at one time. And I'm just not so sure that we can consider each of these projects individually. You know, I think that we have to look at this in the context of all of the capital expenditures that are required for the city and prioritize those. I'm not sure that this is our #1 priority. It very well may be, you know, for you folks, but I'm not so sure that it should be for the city. is this more important than Harvard Road overpass? Or some other projects that are scheduled? We have 77 on the list, and this is only one of them. The other concern I have is, and maybe you can answer the question, if at some place down the line, we decide not to be in the golf business and we decide that we want to make that property a park, can we utilize the new irrigation system? I know you're going to have different requirements for sprinkler heads on the greens and tees and tee boxes and things like that, but can we utilize the same irrigation system for irrigation purposes if that's a park?
Yes.
We could, but it would be a redesign. You'd have to redesign it in some fashion, and I don't know to what degree that would be. They are watered for very different purposes.
Right.
Yes, you could use the bones of the irrigation system, I believe, but when you get to the ends of the lines, it would require some redesign, and I don't know what the expense might be associated with that.
So Jen, when you say redesign, is it an adjustment or is it,
It's going in and moving heads.
okay,
So
The main line would
redesigning,
stay.
right, main line would stay, your lateral lines would likely change in some fashion, and then your heads and your head spacing may likely change. You're gonna lose your greens, so there's definitely a cost associated. I don't know what that cost is. We didn't have Brian BTG bid that or quote that, so.
The huge advantage I see by eventually when we do it, and once again, do the whole thing right, that I think would be easily transformed into where we want to just have green space. For the benefit is that it has a 25, 30-year life on it. We have all the piping, we have all the heads, things of the sort here. I know that these heads are going from something like 80 feet spread down to 60, so, and it's designed to cover the greens a lot better, so we don't get study having burnt and we're down for a day or two. Well thought out on it. I would think the cost down the road, if we did go just to protect green space, would be nominal compared to what we're putting into it.
Either way, it has to be replaced, whether you, right now, we decide golf course, we don't want it, green space, regardless, it has to be replaced. It can be replaced with, I guess, a less sophisticated system. Golf course irrigation systems are the top of the line. I mean, it is the Cadillac of
They're
irrigation systems.
precision.
It's very, yeah.
Precision.
Your greens are watered, 3,000 square feet are watered differently as opposed to a wide green open area. So either way, it needs to be redone. Doing an open system for a park would be, like Jen said, we don't know numbers, but it would be much less expensive, I would imagine. All the way from your pumping system to your controller to your sprinkler heads. But like I said, regardless, it needs to be replaced all the way to the pump, everything.
Am I correct that the water source for that is the well, am I correct?
Yeah, we currently have a 75 horse motor that pulls out of the aquifer. A little bit different from other golf courses where we don't fill a pond and pull from a pond. We pull directly from the aquifer, but we don't need to pull from a pond like other golf courses because we're not 18 holes. We're much smaller.
If I recall correctly too, I think that when we did Liberty Lake Road, isn't there a pipe there for possible utilization of
gray water?
yes,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
I guess I'm having a hard time wrapping my arms around the fact that people are considering that this won't always be a golf course. I can't imagine we're spending $2.5 million-ish on what, 14 acres over in Orchard Park. I can't imagine what the cost would be to turn 55.03 acres of a golf course into green space and to maintain it with no revenue coming in from it. even if it doesn't break even, not break even every year, I can't fathom the thought of it not being a revenue source going forward. So having, admitting that I can't get past that, I would support doing it all at once. My question would be then, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. Any idea off the top of your head, or could you think about it over the next couple of days, how much time and dollars and hours you guys may have spent over the last couple of years doing the maintenance on this? I'm
So
just curious.
in our peak worst year, we figured about $40,000 to $50,000 in one season. That's with
That's
parts,
huge.
shoring and trenching is a big cost, and then staffing.
That's huge.
The other point on the staffing too is to think if that's $40,000 plus staffing them down there, that takes them away from a regular routine project that they should have been working
And
on.
backfilling it with other people to do what these
Correct.
guys are doing. Exactly my point. Thanks.
Comment?
Guys, nobody's downplaying your role, okay? At one point, I was a department head, and nothing was more important to me than my department. Somebody had to teach me a quick lesson, okay? I started going before the council at that time. They said, you gotta remember, you're not the only department. So I had to learn that, and I know you know that, okay? So it's not a matter of what you're telling us true, not true, needs to be done, doesn't need to be done. That's not the issue. The issue is where does it fall in the pecking order of things that need to be accomplished in the city, okay? So, don't take it personal, it's not, okay? It's simply a matter of, do we spend a lot of money right now because we have a broken sprinkler system, or do we fund more engineering for the overpass, for the Henry Road, okay? What return are we going to get on our investment? How long will the delay be if we choose the wrong capital building process first? If we choose you first, or if we choose them first and put you second, yours could stop working tomorrow, okay? And I just wanted to address a couple of the other concerns that I consistently hear, is that you take time from staff and you move it to a different area and you should be doing, that's the nature of the business, okay? That's not an excuse, okay? That's business, that's the way it works. You're paid, if you're not paying to be doing that, you're paying to be doing that. If that suffers because you're doing that, that's life, okay? Because there's not just an abundance of staff, and there's always something for that staff to be doing. So, as much as it sounds good, okay, to my ears, what I'm hearing is, well, we don't have enough staff to get everything done. Well, we never will, okay? Because all those other sprinklers that are a lot newer than these out here go bad. Heads break, lines break, and I see you out there repairing them, and they're a lot newer than the ones out here. So, that just happens. But I don't want you to think that it's not because we don't believe you. It's simply a matter of what the order is. I think Mike is correct. I agree with everybody. If you're going to do it right. Do it at one time. Got it. 100% behind it. My only question is, do we want to spend the money at this time, okay, on this project? And I don't have enough information to make that decision intelligently, because I'm not quite sure yet where we're going after the meeting the mayor had with the people in Olympia. I don't know what direction that's flowing, okay? So give us an opportunity, and this is just my opinion, give us an opportunity to pull all these things together, to study the big map, okay, and then make an intelligent decision based upon citywide needs, and let us get back to you, okay? And it's not a matter of just trying to bury you, because that's not it at all. Everybody agrees with you that it needs to be done. So let us try to collect some information citywide, get that information, make an informed decision with the council, and then come back to you and tell you what we think we can afford to do, not what we necessarily want to do.
And that works great, thank you. You know, the one piece that I want to walk away with is just so we know how to staff this year.
I understand.
So that's kind of what we're looking for, is how are we going to staff this year and prepare one way or the other. So
Okay,
that's where we want to head.
very good, but I appreciate your understanding.
Mike has a comment.
Just for clarification, I was looking at this proposal on page 12, the paragraph talks about the pond. We're not drawing any water from the pond now, and it was estimated if we were to try to do something like that, we need to put a pump on it, and that would range between 250 to 300,000. If I remember correctly, those numbers are not in that 1.3 million. Right? Because from what I understand, listening to you guys over the years, I don't see us ever probably getting any drawn from that pond, because we'd have to deepen it to make some changes.
Yeah, it's not
So
right.
it have to be much deeper.
I like, can I address over the numbers on the golf course, which was supplied to us? I for one, I know I was been on RJ and Katie for a long period of time. Give me numbers, give me numbers, give me numbers. I'm pleased with the numbers I've seen with the golf courses doing. Why I say that is that my concern was that when I hear it's making money and I don't have numbers to back that up, it always concerned me. In reality, looking at what the numbers are, average of the last 3 years, we subsidize that anywhere, probably about $170,000, $175,000 a year. The money that a golf course brings in takes care of itself, pretty much itself, for salary, wages, and things of that sort there. When I look at these numbers, let's say we use the figure of 175,000. Of the 175,000, we're subsidizing that, and if that is that number, if we didn't have a golf course there, we'd be spending $175,000 a year, probably easily, to maintain 50-some acres of cutting the grass and water and everything like that. So in reality, I look at these numbers, I become even more comfortable as we move on, looking at the golf course being there. That if it almost pays its nut, that's a good deal. And as long as we understand that we are subsidizing it, and we understand what those numbers are, then I think we can make logical decisions based on fact.
Well, and we subsidize so many other things. We've got
Absolutely.
a ton of, Rocky Hill, we've got Pavilion Park, we've got, Cornwall on board, and none of those really, except for this little bit of money we have coming in from some rentals, those are all subsidized. They're
Right.
great amenities that our citizens enjoy, and they pay the taxes to support it. And the golf course is really no different.
And I feel it's important as we move forward that the citizens understand that if we subsidize it and it's 175 or 200,000 or whatever it is, that's what it is. And the numbers we can easily come up with, what does it cost us to subsidize Pavilion Park or something like that? But I think those are numbers that as long as we're transparent with our residents, that we can be comfortable with that. I'm comfortable. I'm a numbers guy. Give me the numbers. And that's what you guys have done, and I appreciate the effort you put forward. I really do.
So Mayor and Council, so just kind of a summary, and if I have it wrong, please correct me. What I hear everyone saying, of the 5 council members that we have here, is if we're going to do it right. I heard that pretty much consistently, I think. What I also heard, though, is this a priority? Is it compared to all the other, projects that are in our capital facilities plan and the transportation projects, how does this one stack up? So the question, and it's a rhetorical question, how do we move forward, and when? And so I guess I'm pausing because this isn't about complaining or griping that we don't have a good system. This is trying to make good long-term strategic decisions. And I'm sensing, and I need you to correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys want to postpone making the decision to go forward or not until after you've looked at all of the capital facility needs of the city. And I'm just pausing of how are we going to get there, because this is the end of February, and I know we have a lot more strategic planning workshops to go through, and I'm not trying to rush you, I'm just trying to be honest that it's going to take us several months to get through all that, and that, I don't know if you all agree, but do you want to move forward now? there isn't any more information we can give you on this project. I think we've given you everything. But it sounds like you need to weigh the decision to go forward or not based on the other priorities that may come out of the capital facility, or the strategic planning. Does everyone concur with that?
That's a fair assessment, and so there's no doubt, at least on what my opinion, okay, is the fact that it needs to be done, not now. Be prepared for this year to keep Band-Aiding it, okay? And it'll give us the opportunity to fully review everything that we have to review. Your decision, as far as I'm concerned, is set.
I agree with that, Brother. I'd just like to see us take the projects in the capital facilities plan, 77 projects, and see if we can't categorize those as to short-term objectives, like within 2 years, things that we want to do, and then the longer-term projects that we want to prioritize. I think that's the way most of the strategic plans that I've seen are developed. And that is, the short-term objectives and then the longer-term objectives. So, is it possible to do that, do you think, Katie?
Yes. The challenge you have is that, the life of the investment, whether you're paving a road or fixing a pothole, fixing a pipe, fixing an irrigation, fixing a roof, those are things that have a life of, there's a life expectancy to those. And it's hard. And I know we have a lot of needs out there, whether it's in our parks, in our roads, on the bridge. There are other funding strategies that other projects have. And so what am I talking about? I'm talking about the overlay at the heights that we're doing. We have utility taxes that fund that. We have the opportunity to get funding from other entities, whether it's TIB, state and federal funds for the bridge. We also have Tiffin Lift and Harvard Road irrigation. The Orchard Park that we talked about, it's an expensive project, and the bids came in and they were high. But there's the Tiffin Lift reimbursement. So I'm not trying to kick the can here. I'm trying to be honest. I don't know of any other funding source for this activity, and RJ's going to correct me if I'm wrong, other than the general fund. Is that? And I don't know if there's any loans or anything.
Your source of revenue is going to be from the general fund. I mean, you alluded to how the golf course brings in and takes care of itself, other than the green space. So if you're looking to make major capital improvements, you're looking for a funding source as the general fund. If we have it identified on the capital facilities plan we mentioned, REIT funds are also available to be used towards that.
So then I go down to our building. So we don't have any major capital work at the police or libraries building, normal ongoing maintenance here and there. City Hall, we don't have any big major capital projects here. We all know that, well, except for Mike and Odin, who swung by and shared some ideas, but then we have Trailhead, and we know the condition of that building. I don't consider it broken. It's not optimum. It is a 40-some-year-old building. We do have challenges over there, but it's not falling down, and the systems are working. So I'm just trying to put things into perspective of what other projects do we have in the capital facilities plan. And as we grow as a city, we know that, demand for our services, whether it's our parks or our facilities, will continue to grow. And I don't know what other project would compete with this, but Jen and RJ,
I think the
Mayor.
decision needs to be made, are we gonna be in the golf course business? Are we gonna be in the golf course business, And, you're gonna make that decision. If you're gonna be in the golf course business, you need to go put water in there and stay in the golf course business. If we're gonna be in the golf course business, then how long do you think we might be in the golf course business? Normally, if we put in a new water pump and all that other stuff, we'd probably be in the golf course business at least probably 30 years. The second thing you need to figure out is in the golf course business where we're at right now, are we optimizing all the opportunities for all the revenue? I know that if we have weeds out there and dandelions, we're not going to optimize any revenue. But if we have a good quality golf course and our pros are out there and we have a wonderful thing to offer, then maybe our revenues can be increased instead of getting, I don't know, we're getting $15 a round now or 14. Is it? It's $1.25 a hole now. Gee, Jen?
I think it's 15 or 9.
15 for 9, so at buck and a half a hole, I guess, is about where you're at. So are we gonna get, you know, $1.75 a hole? I mean, everybody's going through the same issue. You think Meadowood's gonna get cheaper because they just put $3 million worth of watering out? I mean, they're just doing that right now. I mean, they're gonna have to capitalize that somehow. And they just can't. One thing about the golf courses in the county, I think they're enterprise funds, right, Kate?
They do get general fund assistance though when it
On the
comes to.
capital.
For some of the capital
Yeah.
stuff, yeah. I mean, again, the decision that we need to make right now, I mean, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, is are we gonna be in a golf course business? If we're gonna be in a golf course business, then we need to make sure that we're in the golf course business. And Katie's right, I mean, you know, one of the things, we came back from Olympia and we talked about transportation over there. I mean, and that's the big thing kind of in a growing community. There's a myriad of money over there that we need to make sure that we're collecting. And it's the same thing with the trails and so forth. But in this particular case, if we're gonna be in the golf course business, we have to provide them water. We have the water in our own well. We need to make sure that we can get it on, delivered to whatever the greens they are, and have the people there to make it happen so we can increase our revenues. And I think if you sit down and say we're gonna subsidize $100,000 or $200,000, that's what we're gonna do. You know, just like we do a park. And maybe it's the brakes that should be put on this year, might be the Orchard Park. And say, look, let's focus on this, and then next year we'll focus on the structure in Orchard Park that might work. Because that's the same somewhat the same $2 million general fund investment that you paid back differently, but point being is, are we gonna be in the golf course business? Because if we're not, hey, this is turned into a park, call good. You know?
I'd just like to remind everyone that in 2017, the number one priority for this city council was Trailhead Golf Course, to address it completely, as far as the building and the whole facility was concerned. That priority changed in 2017, and it might change again this year. But I'd like to have the opportunity to sit down and have this council determine what our priorities are going to be this year and next year, and then on a long-term basis. That's what we're trying to do here, is develop a strategic long-term plan. Not make a decision on what's the hot topic this year. And I think we have to address Trailhead Golf Course overall, not just the irrigation system. We have an old building there, and I think we have to go back to what our priority was in 2017 and look at that and say, do we still want this to be our number one priority, the golf course? Or is there something else in the city that should be more important? We're in the business of providing services, and to subsidize it doesn't bother me. We're subsidizing it out of the general fund, or we're paying for improvements out of the general fund. I think the project is one question, what the priorities should be. I think how we pay for it is a different question. And I don't think we're at the point right now where we can answer that question. So I'd like to go back to try and establish our priorities based on all of the important projects that are pending right now. And I understand there are various sources of revenue, and some of these things come up and you get a grant or something that might change our thinking. That's why you look at your strategic plan every 2 years and say, should we change these plans? Or should we keep them the way they are? Anyway, I'd like to suggest at the next meeting that we get down to business and start looking at all these projects and try to prioritize them and establish priorities for all these projects. Thank you.
In response to that, given the fact that we do have multiple funding sources, in my mind, it makes more sense to tackle it, to separate them first by a potential funding source, and then work on subcategories from there. I don't know what thoughts are on that, but if funding Harvard Road or the overpass has nothing to do, if those funds have nothing to do with what we're talking here, then there really isn't a competing priority. So I think if we can separate them by potential funding source, I think that's a start, and we can work it narrows it down a little bit more. We can work on smaller batches of priorities.
So I don't want to cut anybody off, but it sounds as though what I'm hearing is, and I don't know when the conversation is going to be when we decide what our number one priorities are in the strategic plan, but maybe that's the item for the next workshop, is us bringing back some information about our capital facilities plan and you guys weighing in and talking about what you think the priorities are, because we have a list, lots of lists. I think Councilmember Moore said there's 77, but I'm sorry.
Number 2 is a poll.
Oh, okay. I won't mention that one. Anyway, what I was going to say is that, you can't have 77 priorities. We're a small city. We got to focus on and identify the key priorities, and that can be a subject for the next workshop.
Very good.
So what if, sorry, I saw you making a move.
Yeah, Chris, I wanted to tell you, thank you for that thought, okay, because it makes a lot of sense. Instead of looking at what the actual project is, look at the funding. That's thinking a little bit out the box. I appreciate that. I just want to tell you, though, that I do agree with the mayor. I can see where he's going, because what he's saying is lay a basis for what you're going to be looking at. And if you're not in the golf business, everything else is mute, okay, including the building, okay, the greens, the parking lot, okay, everything. Then it all has to be looked at. No. So I agree that that is the fundamental question, whether or not we want to be in the golf business. And one of the ways that we're going to arrive there is by doing just what Chris suggested, looking at these from a funding source, and if they're non-competitive, they're non-competitive. There's nothing else sitting out there, then we have to make a decision. But I would like to ask the staff one thing. How would you go about if today you come back to the council and said, hey, guess what? All the plumbing is in, we got new line, got new everything, we're running up 100%. How would you make sure that in 25 to 30 years or even 15 years, we don't end up back having to replace everything at one time? How would you ensure that the next council that sits here will know that X number of years down the road, we need to be earmarking some money for irrigation at that particular location? Or is that something that you can't be answered, that, it works until it breaks and then it needs to be replaced? Help me there.
Asset management. So just like your roads, every year you keep on top of maintenance. And this is part of that. And so I call it asset management. We have assets in the city. There are roads, there are buildings, there are parks, there's irrigation, there's buildings, and you fund your asset management over the course of time. You can't do it all at once. But every year we spend, I don't know, Andrew, how much on street maintenance, paving roads, probably a couple $100,000, and every year we spend another couple $100,000. And so you're never done. It goes on forever, but you just keep at it. And I think the community overall in Liberty Lake appreciates the fact that we do invest in taking care of our assets at our parks and in our streets.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're never done.
Oh, I agree.
There's
I
always-
agree. But I guess what I'm just asking is for a little education. Is irrigation such an animal that it functions until it breaks and then it needs to be repaired completely? Or you keep talking about you don't want to keep digging it up?
So when this pipe is brittle, in the 70s, PVC plastics were not what they are today. They're brittle, they age. This is at the end of its life. Pipes now are built to last longer.
It's 52.
50 to 100 years is what they're saying, but you still have fittings and the like. But I would say that, I mean, I worked in a water department. The life of our pipe that we were installing in the 80s was 50 years. And better bedding, better compaction, the whole 9 yards. The installation matters. This pipe is, you only operate it a couple months, 6 months out of the year. It's not even like you operate it 12 months out of the year. So, I mean, pipes are designed to last longer today than they did in 1970.
Okay.
On the replacement side, it's what we want to get better at, and we've talked about it as discipline of putting that aside for the replacement cost.
And that's to one of Bob's major contributions to the council, is the fact that he likes to have money earmarked for particular functions, and I realize that that's questionable, and I can appreciate that. But I don't want the next council to have to make a decision, you know, a $1.3 million decision because we're broke and it ain't going nowhere until that gets done, you know. So I don't know how to keep up irrigation. That's your business, okay? Thank you for everything that you do to it, okay, to keep it, get us this far. But I just thought maybe you had some remedies that, you know, every few years, I don't know. And maybe I'm asking the wrong question. If I am, I apologize.
I'd just like to comment on Chris's comment, and I think one thing that we should remember too, when we're looking at, you know, funding sources, is that the last time I looked, I think we had $16 million bonding capacity in the city that's unused. And let's not forget about that we do have debt capacity in the city and bonding capacity. Is it still $16 million? Is it?
I'll have to go back and look, but I think it's like closer to 25.
25 now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Give anybody anything.
Anyway,
It's gotta pay for it.
let's not forget that we have that capacity, and it's always been my contention that you finance long-term assets with long-term debt. And it gives you the flexibility of having more projects that you can address that way.
Oh, Chris. Mike, let's go to Mike. He hadn't got in there yet.
Okay, Mike, come on.
Oh, come on. I was gonna say with Trailhead, for me, I've always looked at Trailhead is that, to me, Trailhead was purchased for the primary reason, green space. And it just so happens that it had a golf course. And I know Steve has always pointed out as well, it had a mower which we needed, you know. 2.1 million for a mower was a lot of money.
We had a golf cart too with that.
Oh,
But based on that, I still look at Trailhead the same way, is that to me, it's green space. My goal is to protect the green space. And secondly, do I see that we have a golf course there? I see that we have a golf course there. When I mentioned about holding up on irrigation to see how it works in the overall plan, in my mind, I'm not including the building necessarily in that. Because I think we can do that type of stuff, and the building doesn't have to be part of it. But when we were brainstorming here at these meetings over the last couple of months, and really good ideas came up. And a couple of them was, do we keep the golf course the way it is right now? Is the holes 400 and some odd yards? Is it 300, wherever it is? There was an idea of consideration, and I think it's great to get all ideas out on the table. That way we can rule out the ones that don't make sense and the ones that do. When the concern came up of the driving range, could the driving range be narrower and maybe shortened up, and could it be put down here on the golf course? Could a couple of holes be shortened from 400 yards to 300 yards and be able to utilize the driving range down there? I think that's a plausible idea. On the surface, some individual may look at that and go, well, that's stupid, that's ridiculous. That's how ideas never get done. If we attack initially how they don't work, let's look at how they can work. In doing so, that would eliminate and give us a lot of land up here, which is very valuable, could be utilized for something different. So if that's the case, if we look at the course we have now and say, you know what, we like the way it is, we're not going to change anything, then it becomes a moot issue on the sprinkler system. But if it's looked at and says, you know what, we could change this and that, make it better, that changes the irrigation. So my concern would be is this, if we don't look at those avenues and move ahead with the irrigation, and then hindsight is, dang, we could have done this, then we've made a mistake. So that's where I would like for us to be creative, think outside the box. Jen, you and I have had this conversation, it's great to think outside the box. Do we want to keep the golf course exactly how it is now? Can something be changed to make it more efficient? Or with the driving range or anything like that? If so, that changes the irrigation.
So that question has come up, Councilmember Kennedy, and I know Chris isn't here tonight to answer it. There's a lot of capital that would go into rearranging it, and I'm not an expert, but the people that should be answering those questions, it has been come up, the reconfiguration, shortening the holes, moving them, moving the driving range. So those are all things that have been looked at, but I think Chris is...
I think overall, when we talk with Chris about it, it's possible, but it's not a money-saving venture. You're thinking outside the box in a total redesign, and it's a whole different avenue we haven't gone down yet, because it's definitely one's going to cost you more than if you added the three components together between the irrigation, driving range, and the facility. It's
Keep in mind,
$5
it
million.
doesn't make money now, so that's really not an
Right.
issue.
It does not, yeah, but
That's not an issue, it's never going to be part of it. My point being is that what you said was, Chris, we looked at that, and it didn't make sense, and then what you also immediately said is that we didn't really look at it.
all right.
So it's
We
either one
did
or
look
the
at
other.
it. We did look at it, and I think Chris can really, has the best grasp of it. He knows the course really well, and the pros and cons of moving things around, the costs and the, benefit and all that. So we can certainly, I agree, creative solutions are great, but I also know that when you're in the golf course business or any kind of business, that I think we need Chris here to kind of have that conversation for the
Right,
possibilities.
and what we need is some research on his part also.
Right.
Like, for example, one of the things when we had everybody here, and Chris gave us that report, one thing the council asked Chris, if you go back to the agency that gave us this report on the net and asked, get some ballpark
He's
idea
doing
of what
that.
it would cost if we shortened that. That's been 2 months ago, and we still have not had a report on that.
We're correct.
Okay.
He is taking that on, but we haven't gotten the report back yet.
Right. My thought is that, once again, if he's looked at those things and has ruled them out, it doesn't do us, the council, any good not to be aware of them.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, Chris,
So I think we could sit here and hypothesize all night, throw out all kinds of what ifs. It sounds to me like, correct me if I'm wrong, that we're on board with tackling the priority list and dividing it up first by funding source. Do we want to go ahead and see if we want to schedule that next session for the 13th? And I guess my ask would be to get the list broken down by the funding source ahead of time, so we as individuals can kind of go through it ourselves and maybe make some mental notes or physical notes or whatever you want to do to kind of put your ideas on paper ahead of the meeting as to, within those categories, what are your top 1, 3, 5 priorities or whatever they may be. That way we don't have to see it for the first time when we get to that meeting. We can put some thought into it ahead of time.
So do I have it right? So I'm calling it capital facility plan by funding source, and it's the one that was adopted, I think.
2016 was the last time the CFP was adopted, and so on the bigger ticket items, you'll see them out there. They're going to have multiple because they'll cover multiple areas. Bond will be listed as a potential revenue source, but then you got to talk about what's going to pay for it. So then you're looking at, you also have REIT. With the transportation, you could have a combination of REIT and Harvard Road. So there is a mix and match that.
Leave that to your expertise to split that up.
I just want to have one other comment. I think in addition to prioritizing these things, I think that, again, we're in the business of providing services. And I would like to see us develop the level of service standards for each department in the city. Because we're only going to look at, we're only going to be looking at really the fixed asset plan when we look at these priorities. We're not looking at the human resources plan. And that is, we have level of service standards for one department in the city. That's a police department. I feel pretty comfortable with that standard. So we know that for every 1,000 people that we get an increase in population, we need one additional police officer right now. So we have an established level of service, and we have that standard. We don't have it for the other departments. And I think we have to look at, and I mentioned this at our last council meeting, we have to look at what are the level of service standards for the other departments? What is it for the library? What is it for park and rec? What is it for streets? You know, how many people we're going to have? We're going to make decisions about, we're going to pay people and have employees, or are we going to have assets? We're going to have streets and buildings. Until we do that, until we know what our projected level of service and our standards are, how many people we're going to have 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I don't think we can make these decisions. Otherwise, future councils are going to be making decisions, you know, we're going to do this project or we're going to lay off people because we've got too many people or we don't have enough people. How are we going to get enough people to provide these services? That's a challenge as I see it. So I'd really like to see us address that with level of service standards again. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes.
One, please. I would take this opportunity just to ask RJ. In one sense, I understood that the staff addressed the golf course somewhat akin to a park. Is that an accurate analogy or not?
A park that makes money.
Okay.
All right.
Is there, I know that we were told earlier this year that we missed the boat on some park grants.
RCO,
yeah.
we were not selected for RCO funds for Orchard Park.
Because we had already had a,
We
had already
didn't
had a
score
bite at the
high
apple.
enough.
No, we had one that we had already
That's the signal.
used.
Yeah, that was a transportation.
Oh, that wasn't part
Transportation
of that,
plan.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. So, excuse me on that. Is there any park funds or not loans, but grants that would be applicable to this? And I don't expect an answer today if you just think
I
about
will
it.
research it. I will tell you, RCO is the best when it comes to parks for grants. That's very competitive, and a golf course isn't going to score well. But I'll look at that.
Okay, I was hoping maybe, I know y'all got a lot of work to do, so just asking you to do more work doesn't solve anything. But if there's private organizations that may have a leaning toward golf, okay, or golfers associations or things like that on national or level that help fund, okay,
Right.
golf or whatever, just
Usually
Out of
it's
the park.
programs, but we can ask Chris if he knows. I'm stretching my imagination to think if I ever heard of a public golf course that received private dollars for capital needs. For programs, yes, because they'll sponsor First Tee
For
and all of, for programs.
right.
But I don't know that I've ever heard of them
We'll look.
public, but we'll look.
Good for it.
That's all you
We'll
can
get
ask.
that.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm sorry.
Well, one thing we brought up earlier, Stevie brought it up, and council members have mentioned this also. I really think that we need to put on a priority for the council to decide if we want to be in this golf course business or not. I think we need to put that at some point to a vote, that we say, yes, we're going to be in the golf course business or not. Prior to that, I think it's just speculation. Because I think the vote will be, my personal opinion is that yes, we're going to be in the golf course business. And I think by making that decision allows us to move into all the rest we're talking about.
Well, I think that that's an important element of it, but it has to be done in conjunction with that plan written right there on that paper. That before we make that commitment to the big picture, are we able to support it today?
I guess my concern would be, Odin, is that I want to say, almost time is of the essence. My concern would be is that I'm totally in favor of this, I'm totally in the priorities. I've been a broken record for years on that. But also, I don't want to see the can kicked down the road. Keep getting kicked down the road. You know,
I got it, but
I don't
what
want to
has,
wait, I don't
let me
want to
tell
wait
you,
another month and we still don't know.
no, I
Is there any
understand,
doubt you guys
and I
want
agree
to
with
be
you,
in
I don't wanna
golf
go there.
course?
I think it's imperative that we start doing something instead of talking it to death.
Okay, good.
Okay, I agree with you, but prior councils, me included, because I've been on the prior councils, have kicked the can down the road. Okay, which brought us to 2017, $1.3 million decision to make. Okay, so the can gets kicked down the road a lot. Okay, so, but to make sure that we do it right, we do need the discussion. And I don't personally care if it takes a month or a year. I just want to get it right. You know, that's all, that's what's important to me. Not that I'm right, but that what we provide is right. And that we can fund it today and tomorrow.
I support that. I just don't want to get lost in the.
I agree with you, Mike. I think it's important to shut up sometimes and just do.
Thank you.
So just a point of question, on the date, RJ said that he would be able to put the capital facilities plan by funding source together for the March 13th, which is the Tuesday after March 6th, okay.
And I think we might be able to make a decision at that meeting, whether or not we want to be in it. Whether we want to be in the golf business.
And then, do you guys want a start time? We've done 6, we've done
6:30.
7, we've done
6.
6:30.
6:30.
5:30.
Not fun.
No idea.
6:30.
4:30.
6:15? 6:15.
No, we're at 6 over here.
And it keeps going up.
6:30?
6:30.
5:30.
6:30.
Hey,
Oh, you can come at 5, you can come at 5.
Yeah,
Let's come at 6.
Please do.
Let's come at 6.
6:30 is good.
No, 6:30 is not good.
So the next item on tonight's agenda has to do with the discussion about.
Jen, thank you.
Thank you. So at the last workshop, I know all of you weren't here, but what came up is what if? What if the economy goes in a negative direction? What's going to happen to the city? Because the concern was that we were going to be in dire straits and we would be scrambling on how we were going to balance the budget and how we would approach a budget reduction. So what RJ has done is, and he's going to cover it, he's made some assumptions and he wants to share with you how we'll know and what we'll do, and then we'll take questions from there.
Is that going to be up on the screen?
I'm going to attempt to.
Oh, okay. I'm going to turn some lights on, so.
Yeah. So, I want to start with the first page I handed out. I do want to stress that, the narrative, more the narrative. I do want to stress this is just for simulation purposes. If the actual state has predicted that there will be a growth 4 to 5% moderate growth over the next 2 years. So what I'm going to show you is it's all fairy tale right now. So
Whoa.
right now.
Right now.
Right now.
But is it accurate? You say it's a fairy tale.
In the simulation, it's accurate. If we saw a drop.
We made
right
some
now.
pretty,
Okay.
and I'll say these are dire assumptions.
Sure.
And I'll also say that some of our budget balancing strategies are very dire as well.
Yeah.
So, but
What I just want to make sure is that this is not anywhere indicated that this is going to happen. I don't want people coming out saying we're going to be down $1 million. I don't want the wrong message getting out. And I'm sensitive about fake news today. So what I handed out was a scenario that we came up with that would assume that the sales tax had taken a 33% downturn. In relation to that, permit revenue would also have taken a downturn as well. So we're assuming that kind of like the last recession, building has slowed down and sales tax has dropped off. The result of that drop is a $1.3 million reduction in revenue, and then the and we're assuming that this would be going into 19, and that we'd be looking at a projected deficit of about $923,000. And this is based on what we budgeted for 2018. So one of the indicators, Howard, that this wouldn't take us by surprise is when we do that monthly dashboard, and that arrow that we do starts to drift downward. And I just want to show you kind of an example of what that would look like, and it's the second page on there. Man, this projector. Is that we would be reporting, we would see the sales tax starting to go down, and we would be moving that arrow to the left. So as we're going through the year in the simulation, that arrow has slowly projected going left. We know something's happening, and we've been reacting to it in 2018. But this is to really prepare for the budget for 2019 and what are we going to do differently and how we're going to react. So, going back to, so one of the indicators, you know, is the monthly dashboard, and then the goal is going to 19's budgets, identify savings that will minimize the impact to essential services. So what we did was to look how can we reduce that $923,000 deficit to baseline as close as possible without affecting essential services. So we reduce, items would be like reducing the travel and training that are not required for certification purposes. We defer essential equipment purchases. We reduce seasonal staff by 30%. And so Jen could talk to what the implications of that, but that would be a pretty huge reduction for them. And then there's other items that are listed on the third page on the back. We'll get to those minutes in a second. But the reductions would be $735,000, which would still leave a $188,000 deficit on there. So the question would be at that point, would come back to you, do you want us to continue to keep cutting into this, or are we looking to using the reserve fund that we have established that's at $1.2 million. There's several scenarios to go through. This is the one we chose. We want to show you how we could potentially react to that. So on that, are there any questions before I go on the other two? Yeah.
Yes, when you show the 33% reduction, that's 33% based on where we are right now?
That is 33%. We looked at taking what we budgeted for 2018, which was $3 million, and reducing it by 33%, bringing it to 2.
Okay, in that number, we're running about 14% higher in sales tax than normal.
In 17, we ran about 3.3 million.
Okay, so but it's about 14% or so.
Yeah.
So that 14% is represented in that 33%.
No, I backed it off because the 14% we were running higher in 2017. I can pick 2 specific construction projects that were one-time revenues.
So you backed that out?
I backed that out already.
33% is based on realistic numbers.
We backed out the anomalies that made us 14%
Right.
higher.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second, I would like to know, before we get too much further, is can you tell me in your estimate what our essential services are?
Public safety, snow removal, street repairs, sweeping, taking care of the streets, basic park functions, so keeping the thing mowed, but maybe not mowed to the level of service that you're seeing it today.
Council wages are in there, of course.
No, I didn't touch those.
I don't know, we might have to increase our mental health spending to reduce.
Yeah, there you go.
The library would be an essential service, because it's a big piece of the property.
Well, right now, the library is tied to the property tax, so.
So
yeah.
That's an essential.
So there was
essential life
minimal-
safety first, obviously building inspection, things, services that people pay for. Trying to think, donations that you guys make in your budget would not be an essential. We would cut, donation and support for maybe some community events or community projects. Fireworks is not essential.
Memberships.
Memberships is not
What
essential.
about annual fees, so like, say,
Free-
GSI?
So those in there on that last page, you flip over the back. Those are the discretionary ones we took off. So we took GSI off, we took the splash off, we took.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Does this assume the other taxes would remain the same? Utility taxes as an example?
It does assume the other taxes would remain the same. Property tax wouldn't be affected by the downturn because that is based on assessed valuation. It's also based on the budget of the city. So if the city
It
had,
should be utility taxes at 3%, right?
yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
So what are the other taxes that would be affected by the drop in the sales tax?
So sales tax, there is a criminal justice tax that has a 1/10 of 1% sales tax, and then there's a public safety tax that we get. That's also a sales tax item.
But we would still be, we'd be liable for that. I mean, we have to pay those, right?
Well, those are on top of the sales tax. So on that 8.8% that you pay in sales tax, a portion of that is public safety.
already going out.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's why the reduction in that.
Thank you.
RJ, you have here under, just an example in the back, underground utilities, 25,000. Remember, how do we adjust that?
So we, every year, for the last, I think, 3 years, we've been transferring $25,000 into the underground utility fund.
Oh, okay.
If we are looking at stuff that's not essential, that's when we.
We could defer the contribution.
And the stuff on this list, you can come back if I present it to you, if we're going through the scenario, you can say, well, no, you're not doing this one. This one, this is important to us, we're still staying with
I was
that.
assuming that was a fixed expense for
No,
utilities, okay, very
no,
good.
that's a policy decision.
All right.
Okay.
This is good.
Well, you did some homework, thank you.
I'd like a couple of comments if I may. I was here and moved here in 2009, and that was right after the 2008 recession. And, I was at a council meeting then when council and Mayor Wendy and Norman were actually facing these kinds of issues, what they're going to do, and thank you. What they were going to do. They were talking about, reducing people at the library, putting them part-time, and there are all kinds of discussions about, cuts in staffing and all those things. And they also discussed increasing the utility tax to 6%, I think, at that time. And because there was a big reduction in sales tax. Mayor Peterson was at that meeting. I remember him getting up at the podium. I didn't know who he was at the time. I said, who is that masked man anyway?
Did you say madman or masked man?
Masked. Excuse me. Anyway, and he had some comments on how he thought the issue should be resolved. Anyway, it wasn't a very pleasant time, a very difficult time for the city, and I hope that the city doesn't have to go through that again. But one of my suggestions, has been to alleviate the impact of those kinds of things is to establish replacement reserves for some of the city's fixed assets. And I think I talked previously about police vehicles. And, but I'm sure there are others that would be critical, to the city in keeping to provide services. Anyway, hope we never have to go through it. But I think there are some positive things that we can do to alleviate the impact on it. Thank you.
I think this is a good way for us to know in advance what our options might be. So if we do have to face this, we already have a list of some ideas of where we can, especially the memberships. Because I remember, we were sitting here together during that time, and we didn't. And RJ wasn't here. Had he been here, I think we may have had some different options.
I think you're right.
So
You would have better numbers.
yeah, yeah. But I appreciate this exercise and identifying what the future could look like and what our options would be. So thank you for putting this together.
Out of this, what is it that you want us to take away from this?
We talked about the last workshop meeting about a what-if scenario. What I wanted to do is put some numbers of this, if we had a 33% reduction, which the $2 million in sales tax goes back to 2013 level. I mean, that's when we were at $2 million, how we could respond. So when we're talking about future planning for other projects, you know, can we take that step? You know, we got to hold money back because we can't make a decision on a capital project, but we could say, well, as long as we're maintaining the revenues, we know we can make some maneuvers early. And we have the replacements, or we do have the reserve fund to consider as a tool to use that in a downtime too. So that's just a reminder, that's why we put it on there. We got it down to $188,000. Do you want us to cut more, or do we consider using that reserve fund? And the idea of using the reserve fund is also the plan of, we're going to use it, we're also going to have a plan to replenish it.
Well, you know, that's a good question. And are we doing anything habitually at this point to increase that fund? Are we purposely setting out a percentage and amount to say, rainy day?
So it's exceeding the policy of what we've established.
Understand?
As we talk about, I think it was we talked about this capital plan, and we talked about the irrigation and having money set aside in the future, that's where you start establishing, I'm putting money aside for this replacement cost.
So I'm assuming that no.
No.
You're correct.
We do have a reserve that exceeds our policy, but is it enough? We can
Never.
certainly look at, it's never enough.
Right.
But I want to, for me, this exercise, it was good for us to do it, and I appreciate the comments and feedback that we got. It's, you know, you try to manage the delivery of public service, as Councilmember Moore said, all the time, every year. And you always are looking for the most efficient way to deliver those services. And when times are tough, and you have to find ways to reduce the cost of your operations, and then you go back and you start looking at things. And I think what this does at a very high level, it's one way that we would identify non-essential services and then balance that with the reserves. Because sometimes economies don't go on a calendar year, sometimes they extend into the next year. And so you kind of have to be resilient in that way of having kind of a combination of reductions and reserves. And this is just one idea, but if we went into the next year, then probably have the continued reductions and then continued use of those reserves. Is that fair? Okay. But
Good, Mike.
I just have a question when we're through with this discussion.
I think one of the,
Go ahead, sir.
I think one of the things that we miss a little bit when we talk about the dire times, you know, in my life, it's always been, you know, we're not too much worried about the expenses. You should be more worried about the revenues. In any business, you've got to increase your revenues. You got to be able to sell something, get the cash coming through the front door. You can always sit on your invoices and things like that, like Avista did a number of years ago. But you need to increase the revenues, and so you have to look at where I think strategically we've come is that we've been able to diversify our revenue stream a little bit from 2008 and 9. I mean, the utility tax diversified it from a standpoint of, hey, now we've got three-legged stool, so that helped. I think that we really looked at how are we going to deliver services within our organization and how we're going to align our organization to be more functional, not top-heavy in salary or non-essential people, you know. What were our core priorities? I mean, we funded our police department. I don't think we ever missed a meet with those guys. Maybe delayed a car or two. But the point being is that we've focused on that. We did not tap into the reserve fund. That was set up in 2001. It was, I think, at 10% or 15% of whatever it is, up to $1.2 or $1.3 million. One of the things we've done over the last 4 or 5 years is reduce our debt. So we carried debt into this because we bought at kind of in this downturn time and reduced debt. Some of the things we could have done back in those days when you could have used your reserve funds, or it was some of your money to invest in some of the things that the community needed, you know. And I'm just taking a street project, for instance. Had we been able to really focus on Henry Road, for instance, and we got a $10 million project done, $1 million would have flowed back into the city as far as sales tax revenues, because we got the match from the state. It goes into the lift, but it increases the revenue picture for us. So focus on your revenue, you know, always be cognizant of how you're spending money in the first place. And then, quite frankly, one of the biggest issues back in that day, I'm glad you brought up about the light bulb. But I think, but the fact is, you know, we have RJ, and RJ does have a number, and when we're looking at those numbers, he's got a very, 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 very good handle on it. And
Very much
that
so.
was one of the issues that we had in 2010.
And that's worth repeating, Mayor. You hit it right on the head. I'd be a lot more comfortable and I'd be a lot more confident having these two individuals aboard during an incident like that than we did in 2000 and something, 2007, 2008, okay? Our staff is competent, the directorships are competent, and I think we could be competent. And I think just the whole scenario, right on down to who's the mayor at the time, who's at the helm at the time, makes a big difference. So I don't look forward to it if it should happen, but if it does, I think we can be a little bit more confident about where we're going.
Steve? Reserve, we're sitting, RJ, about 2 million.
Your reserve fund specifically has 1.2 million in it. Our general fund is sitting in a balance of about a little over 4.5 million right now.
Okay, so let's say we're at 1.2. Steve, what I'm curious about, if you can, maybe this would be a good time to address this, is that everything has changed drastically with Harvard Road and what might happen over the last few weeks or so. And what I read in when Mike was here is that if we're in a position to put some money into that program, it puts us ahead of the game dealing with the state. So what do you anticipate? You guys have been talking enough to figure out, I assume where we tap into the money could be into the reserve, and that could be repaid. That could be repaid through the lift, can it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think,
So I think a good time we can touch on that.
yeah. Lift takes expended monies. So you expend money, but you get the money back
Right.
within the
Yeah.
process. So it's like a temporary loan. It's also an invoice type thing. So I mean, here's your invoice. Even if we haven't probably even paid that invoice, here's your invoice, and you get the money back.
Lift, I have to have a finished project.
Have to have finished project,
Yeah.
right?
Whoa, 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 that throws everything in. A finished project?
Yeah.
So if we did just the engineering on it, which is a hefty portion, it could run up to $500,000 or better, that's not reimbursable?
I will
as
check
itself?
on just the design, but I believe you have a finished project.
So we could be years away from getting reimbursed, even though we have our expenditures up front, which is understandable.
But now we're talking about a financing on a specific project that we need to spend more time with. It's because this is, what we're talking, what you're just mentioning here, this is the first time I'm hearing it and looking at all the, because you're looking at using the reserve fund to throw in more
Well,
money for this
I think-
project, and we're
I
not.
think what we're talking about though is a refund system, not net, I don't care what project it is, it's just, we expend money, Mayor, and it comes back to us through the lift. But the new caveat that maybe I didn't even understand is that this has to be a completed project, which could stretch out to 2022 or so before we ever got our money back. So that's a very important element, Mayor. Why, wait, you're shaking your head, is that wrong? Am I misinterpreting it?
Well, could be. I'm not gonna-
Allow me to re-clarify my comment. Because I don't want to go down that garden path, that rabbit hole right now. My question is, we have funds that we could put towards Harvard Road, helping us move ahead with putting us in a better position to get funding from the state.
See, let me just throw this back at RJ,
All
right?
right,
So, we have right-of-way acquisition. So we go in, let's say, we don't have, but let's say we want to have right-of-way acquisition for a future trail. That's listed in our plan, our.
you're talking about right-of-way acquisition now. Yeah.
Right-of-way acquisition. So that is a project.
Okay,
So if I fund money for that right-of-way acquisition,
Public infrastructure.
pardon?
I believe, Mayor, it's, so.
public infrastructure, but you're buying it, so if I buy a piece of land with the intent of building public infrastructure on it, I need to also get that public infrastructure in
The
place.
public infrastructure has to be constructed in order to be eligible to be reimbursed.
That's how Orchard Park is designed. We're not, the challenge with Orchard Park is we've got to have a finished project, so we have a cash flow, because we have to pay for that, and then get reimbursed through the lift.
Well, we will go back.
But back to the Harvard Road, there is a strategy where the state is putting in right now, it's not a done deal, but Mayor was successful with others over in Olympia, that there's $500,000 for the design of Harvard Road on both the Senate and the House's bill, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so in brief, very brief conversation, very preliminary, that would then accelerate the design for the project, that then would make that project more attractive to get more funding. And so that's kind of how the state works all the time, where we could add money to the construction side to get it accelerated faster and then reimburse ourselves through Harvard Road and Tiffin Lift up for a completed project. But there is a cash flow concern that RJ mentioned, is the money has to go out and be spent before it can come in. And if you were really, you would have to develop a strategy where if you weren't able to do the whole project, you could do enough of the project in phases or incrementally, so that at least whatever went out got done enough so that you could get reimbursed.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
You'd have to-
reimbursement and the length that it would take to get the reimbursement, we would have to kind of keep an eye on. But I think we got a ways to go. It's doable.
Yeah. I want to just, from a city standpoint of a project and a developer standpoint of a project, are kind of, to me, a little bit different.
So
You know, I mean, you're sitting
I
in
can
this-
run through, I haven't run that specific scenario with the
Yeah.
county. What I understand, communicating with them what the process is the project that you're working on is complete, then it's eligible for reimbursement. Because the lift is designed for public to reimburse public
It supports
infrastructure.
development. Yeah.
You know, along the time there, we watched the development on the north side. We had a lift station installed, okay? And we got a bill sent to the county for refund or repayment of that, okay, to the contractor. You know, in one sense, was the lift station a project? Because it certainly wasn't a project and getting completed overall. You know, I mean, there wasn't roads put in, there wasn't land developed, there wasn't projects going on. So that was a portion of a bigger project.
Right. So the sewer lift station, the pipes, the roads, and the water, those are all public infrastructure that support development. They're eligible for reimbursement. And when that project is done, the developer presents a complete drawing to the county engineers, the county public works department, and they certify that it's a completed project, and then they submit for reimbursement.
So they ultimately
Yeah, but you can't,
determine
yeah,
what's a
so
project.
I guess if it's 100 feet of pipe or 1,000 feet of pipe, they get reimbursed for what they put in the ground.
I'm sure we'll get an answer.
I could, okay, so RJ's gonna confirm.
I'm gonna-
RJ's gonna
No, no,
confirm.
I-
that
Thanks
it's-
for bringing it up.
I think that the thought is that at a policy level is the Tiffin lift is used to fund the development of public infrastructure that supports economic development. And if the public infrastructure is planned but not built, you can't do economic development. You have to have the public infrastructure installed.
Great.
Steve?
Okay, well, again,
I certainly apologize for bringing up the word lift. Because I think
It's important, Mike.
I think I took the train right off the track. What I'm after is that I assume we're gonna be in a position that if we have to put some money into, maybe the 500,000 we get from the state on design, will we be in a position to do that, and that will put us in a favorable position to get additional funding from the state?
Wait,
Yes.
here's the deal, and that is, we tried to do this pay-as-you-go, right? So theoretically, if you had if, for instance, you're going down a 2-year project like this, you could bond for the project, get all your assets in place, and have the repayment come out of the lift
At the end of the
Before it's
project.
at the end of the
That's
project.
correct.
At the end of the project. So if you bonded for it,
Whatever the case, I mean, our goal is to try to pay as you go, but if in the end, if you said, hey, we're gonna do this thing and it's gonna cost $26 million, we get $20 million bond put together, or I mean, whatever our piece is, you do it, and at the end of the day, you present the invoice to the lift funds, they give you the $5 million, you give the $5 million to the bond company, you're done.
Right. The original, well, one of the options with the lift when it was established was to bond the entire capacity and then use the payments to come back to pay for it incrementally over that lifespan, but it,
Time, or as, we couldn't anticipate the revenue
Correct.
flowing into the lift at the time.
but that would be the solution to a cash flow, would be to bond for it, and then project's completed, then you.
I still think the government a government to government, city to the county, establishing like, we bought right away for this fund, for this project, but based on this process, and here's your invoice, I think you can get your money back. I wouldn't put that up to the developer.
Right.
Right, but I think the city could probably get those funds, I'm not sure.
Okay, that's okay.
Yes, Sean.
So is there any other subjects for the March 13th workshop, or is that it? Is that gonna take the
Are
whole
we
time?
staying in the golf business, I think?
Do you want me to
We should
put
be able
that on
make a
there?
decision by then, don't you think? We already made
I'm
one.
confident that we are going to be in the golf business.
I do too, but I just feel that the council needs to say, we are going to be in the golf course business.
We're going to.
Amen.
We're gonna get a buy-in,
Do you want it on the agenda?
please.
Yes. I personally, I'm uncomfortable with this, if we're going to be there. If we're not, come on, let's make a decision on that.
There are some capital facilities items on the list that will have a TBD number at it, because we haven't determined the scope or size of what that facility would be, so there's not going to be like a dollar amount associated with it.
RJ, this trailhead fact sheet you put out is substantially valuable, and I think a lot of people realize how important these numbers are. Thank you.
Okay, so we're down at the end, right? So, it's public comment, and I saw our public just left.
Our public,
They're gonna come back though, because they wanna know if you're gonna stay in the golf course
Can you
business.
call him on his cell phone and see if